Hi everyone, welcome to Lost to the Rabbit Hole. Today I have my friend William Becker on. I
Hi,
was on
everybody.
his, I was on William's show a couple weeks ago. He is a medium, and today we're going to dive into his experiences and how he ended up on this whole paranormal scene.
It's a pleasure to be here, Josh. I really appreciate it. I was excited when you asked. It was so much fun having you on my show.
Yes, it was a blast.
Well, I saw you on Vivian's show, or one of them. You were, or
We
we
were
were.
we were on one together. That's how it
That's right.
started.
That's right. And I thought, oh, I like this guy. He's got to be on my show.
And I was like, well, so I have to turn the tables, and if I get interviewed, I gotta interview them.
Sounds good. I get the hot seat.
Right?
Uh,
How long have you been doing it online and been on the Spooky
oh, geez.
Network?
I've I've been on Simply Spooky Network pretty much since the beginning. Um, Vivian and I have been friends for several years, and she comes and visits and stays with me when I'm over there. I stay with her and Andy, her husband, for a while. Um, Good people, good friends,
Oh, cool,
and
cool.
yeah, so it's not just through Facebook or something.
Right.
But
Have
I've
you
had
guys,
a. I'm
can
sorry.
I interject quick? Can I interject quick? Is Vivian taking you Bigfoot hunting?
I'll probably be taking her because I live in Bigfoot area and I've seen one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, now we got something else to dive into today.
I can't tell you where it is. I, s- I
Absolutely fine.
I swore to them I wouldn't share. I did take Vivian up there, but I let him know. I kind of asked permission, and Vivian had no idea where she was, so she couldn't tell anybody if she tried. Um, well, it's up in the mountains, and they don't have
Right,
mountains like we do,
right.
mountains and forests like we do. Um, so, but yeah, but I'm 50 miles away from Mount Hood and 20 from the Malala River corridor, and those are big active places for Bigfoot. Um, Clackamas County is one of the big Bigfoot counties in the world. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, and we've got the museum not far from my house. Um,
Well, that's awesome.
yeah, so I know we'll go there again. We've been there about 4 times, I think. But next trip over, I'm sure that'll be one of the places that you'll want to stop.
That's awesome. We have a bunch of shops and stuff here too, because Wisconsin's got tons of sightings with cryptids. And
Yeah,
I have to show you. I have this awesome sweater that I got in the Dells, but it's Bigfoot meditating and like levitating. It's like he's got his chakra open,
I love it because that's so appropriate.
right?
Yeah, I mean they're interdimensional beings,
Absolutely.
and
It-
so it makes perfect sense, something like that.
Um, I guess bringing it back to being a medium, was that when did that start with you? Was that something you learned, or was that your entire life? Or
I've pretty much been one I believe all my life. I saw my first ghost when I was about 8, maybe 9, but I think 8. And it was during the afternoon. It was another little boy, and I only knew he was a ghost because I asked the friend whose neighborhood we were in if who it was and if he could play with us. And I got the story about no, he's so and so, and he's dead. He died of typhus. Um, and it's like, oh, okay. And we just kept doing our thing. So it wasn't scary, you know, and
That's good.
it was just part of an adventure on a nice sunny afternoon and doing things. Well, we weren't getting in trouble, but we probably should have been supervised. Um, well, the person who was supposed to be supervising us was one of was the mother of the guy I asked, and she was passed out drunk on the sofa at 1 in the afternoon, so, um, none of us were babysat by her again.
Oh, but
But,
it was a fun time though at the time, just you going around with your buddies.
yeah, oh, we had a great time, and, we were good kids. We didn't do any damage or anything, but we had, his littlest brother was there as a toddler and getting on the wrong side of the fence, keeping people from falling off the 130-foot cliff and, things like that
Oh,
where
wow. Yeah,
safety with the parent would have probably been a good idea. Um, but yeah, it is what it is. Nobody died. We didn't add to the ghosts in town, so no harm, no foul.
right.
Yeah, but I started really working on the skills my late teenage years, maybe as a senior in high school. Definitely when I started university, and so actively working on things with a break here or there, probably 50 years. I've been professional for about 14, 15, um, where I've had enough support and people telling me, no, you're good, you need to do this, including my therapist, that um, and then I had enough experiences that I convinced myself that, yeah, okay, you can go out and call yourself a professional medium now. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's not something you just do overnight.
No, um, I brought it back to that because I imagine the Bigfoot stories probably correlate. That's what I hear from most
Oh yeah, absolutely.
experiences.
Plus, I tend to take tangents, and it's the way my mind works. And so bring me back anytime you need to because it might
Okay,
one comment triggers something else, which triggers something else, which well, your show says it well, down the rabbit
rabbit
hole.
holes. Yeah,
Yeah, and following all the tunnels.
right. It's just
Mhm.
a hard way to get back out.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, hey Jason, thanks for being in, Jason H. Somebody in our chat.
Oh, I think I know Jason H. Hi. If it's who I think it is, he's a good friend.
He says, hand pink wave. And I think, oh, a rabbit. Yes, a white rabbit, he said.
Oh, yep. One of my favorite songs by Grace Slick.
I'm not sure who that is.
Jefferson Airplane.
Oh, Jeffrey. Okay, yes. Okay, yeah, I know now.
Okay. I was almost
Yeah,
having a heart attack here. Um, I forget there are people who weren't born around enough to know the foundations of the movement in the radical 60s and 70s.
right. I was born in '88.
Yeah. So,
Well, my parents were like kind of deadheads, so I mean, I know my dad was total rocker, so I like was brought up on old school metal.
okay. Well, I wasn't allowed to listen to anything like that in the house. I was raised on a lot of classical music and Glenn Miller and Broadway show tunes and a bunch of stuff like that, and I love it all. And my default or
That's
my
awesome.
presets in my car are either public broadcasting or the classical station. But I love political rock. I love psychedelic rock. I love new wave. I love all kinds of music. Don't get me country. I don't like that 99% of the time. And some
What
of
about
the
what about Johnny Cash?
no,
No,
Johnny Cash. Yeah, no, thank you.
no Johnny
No,
Cash.
no.
Man, really don't like his country.
I'm just yeah. Um, yeah, it's not my style,
Yeah, I
but
don't
that's
blame you.
okay. A lot of people like him. I'm not even that big of an Elvis fan, and I'm old enough to be. And I know that's a sacrilege to people, but that's just
Right? The king? How can't you like the king?
I don't dislike him, and I'm just not that huge of a fan. He's got a great voice, and some of his songs I really like, some of them I don't.
Speaking of people like the king, have and all this, have you ever seen anybody famous come to you or been like traveling and seeing?
Well, I had King Tut show me how his soul raised out of his mummy, when I was at his tomb in Egypt. Um, and I could watch because his mummy at the time I was there was still in the sarcophagus, and you could watch him sit up, his soul sit up out of it. And he did that for me 3 times to make sure I had a good feel of it. Um, I saw Sir Francis Drake looking in at me in the pub he used to go to in Exeter when I sat down by the window, and there was nobody else on that street, and Sir Francis Drake had a very particular face. He wasn't easy to confuse with anybody else, and I looked up his picture, and I was, afterwards, and I was right. I didn't have him confused with somebody. And, there have been others, a lot of just normal stuff. We're seeing the priests, seeing the crowd, um, seeing the ceremonies. I haven't seen the human sacrifice yet, but I've seen the cauldrons of blood afterwards. And just things like that that have been fascinating. And I tend to run into my own past lives a lot of times. I'm drawn to places I used to live. Um, and um, so that's always interesting. Um, I was with a friend in Dartmoor once, and we were in a late Neolithic, early Bronze Age village, and but there were several burial kits right there, and I almost stumbled into one, and I just went, "That's mine." And my friend picked up on that too. It was just so clear. Um, so that kind of thing is always fun. That was the first time I stumbled
That,
into my own grave, but almost literally.
that's that's wild. I can't even imagine what that would feel like, especially to be somewhere else.
Well, I've always felt more at home in Europe, England, but any place in Europe, even places like Turkey, than I ever have here in the States. So, um, to me, it makes sense. But yeah, it is kind of that was the first time that had happened, and so it takes a minute to process it and what are you doing and such. And of course, all of the kists had been emptied for of hundreds, if not thousands, of years. There wasn't anything in them, so I didn't see my ashes or my body or anything, but um, I saw where I'd
Still, it
been.
would have been a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Pardon me. I have a little bit
Mm,
of a cold.
no
um,
problem.
yeah, fun of having kids getting sick right as school starts.
Oh yeah.
Not even been 3 weeks.
Oh jeez.
Um,
Oh,
but I was gonna say, if with you traveling to and going to Europe, I imagine with being a medium, there's probably way more to see in that light, being in Europe than being here.
yes. And
Hey Barry.
oh, go ahead.
I said just hey Barry.
Oh, um, and yeah, there is, and we have a lot here too, because we had the Native Americans before. The Europeans were here, and we had different groups that we know the Vikings were here. Um,
Mhm.
there's some pretty good circumstantial evidence that Saint Brendan, I think was an Irish monk, was here even much earlier. And there's
Well,
possibility. Oh,
I think you're gonna say it. Continue what you're gonna say because I'm gonna. Otherwise, I got another rabbit hole we can fall down quick.
okay. Um, but also, one of the paths that may have brought some people in, besides um, the Bering Sea area, which was all a solid landmass for tens of thousands of years, um, with the native populations, what we call native now, coming in. There's some thought that some of them may have actually come down the east coast during the ice ages because the water masses would have been much less. There would have been less distance from shore to shore, and you go the island hopping and different things, and that might explain for the occasional. Oh, I think there's a group I've heard about of blue-eyed Cherokee or something that they don't know if that was because of early internet action with settlers or if it was because one of the groups from Europe had come in. In their small groups, they went away, disappeared, were absorbed, or whatever. But
Yeah.
um, so it's hard to tell.
I have two. No, I have two rabbit holes we can fall down. The one about the
Okay.
blue-eyed people. Too. I know they have the stories about the moon-eyed children. I don't know if you ever heard that. I mean, and there's always stories about them interbreeding with each other.
Moon-eyed children.
They're the
Now I've heard
Star
of the.
Brothers, the Cherokees would say. They're
Oh, okay. Those I hadn't heard of before. That's interesting,
and the
and that would
other
be.
one. Oh, continue. Sorry
No,
for interrupting.
yeah, no, I'm sorry. And these cultures, the gods and the religions and such are all designed around explaining the world around you when there
Hmm.
isn't any science. And so people had to explain, how did these things work? How did they happen? How did they get there? Why does the sun go like this? Or, there had to be some mechanism for everything.
Right.
And then
And
also developing something that helps make a cultural unity. So anyway, go ahead.
But then sometimes you look back at that and you're like, wait, they didn't have a science, but they were way healthier than us. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
Almost
but
like
it
they
was a
were
little
in tune
different.
to something else better than us than we are today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And some things that then we've learned and then turned into, well, like a lot of medications are plant based. It's just that what the labs have done is take something and make it pure and consistent
Hmm.
instead of inconsistent in quality and effectiveness and whatever else might be part of it, and turned it into something where you're going to get a, a consistent product, more readily available. But so much of it is based on anything from plant legends
White,
to snake
white
poison to.
magic. And,
Yeah. So yeah, there's a connection with all of it.
yeah. The other one I was going to say, did you ever hear about the stories about what they found at the bottom of the Grand Canyon? Billy Carlson talks about this a little bit, and he's like, there's apparently like a bunch of Egyptian stuff down there, and it's like completely shut off to the public.
I hear little things, and I don't know much about it because for the most part, I just ignore it. I have a bachelor's in history. I have a master's in another field that um, has a basis that requires legitimate documented proof. And I'm not much on conspiracies and or that kind of thing. I sincerely doubt that there is anything there or not anything that wasn't planted there by somebody trying to create something, but I'm not going to say it's totally impossible. I'll
Okay.
say it's 99% improbable. Um, but I don't have any proof one way or the other.
Right.
So, yeah. Is that supposed to be the Atlantans brought it or something?
No, there's like this whole like the Egyptians were over here trading. There's like a trading route within America, like way before even the Vikings were here. It's just like I believe the theory
Okay.
behind it. And
That's
there's like
interesting.
and the Smithsonian's hiding it. There's so much about this Smithsonian
Yeah,
that
and
goes
that
into
doesn't make sense
conspiracy.
because if we had information like this and such, it would be a great way to help bring in resources for the institutions, and they're always cash starved. So just from a financial perspective, it doesn't make sense to me at this time in history when we know that we keep learning new things. Now, 100 years ago, yeah, you don't want to upset the apple cart, but we're learning new things about history all the time.
Yeah,
And so I would think if there was any legitimacy to it, it would be out there. And it certainly would have been leaked to some pretty mainstream places that could verify it, if nothing else.
right. I mean there was leaks about it. I mean, you never know with these conspiracy theories and what the choir was back in the day and
Right.
but
Yeah. And, the Egyptians um, had
but
a trade route throughout Africa. Most of it was on the Nile. But we people, Bronze Age people were sailing up into Neolithic Britain to get tin. Um, it's the human race is smarter than people give it credit for.
mhm,
And it is possible that there were expeditions that got blown off course and managed to survive somehow and wind up in the wrong place. Um, it happened on the West Coast with Chinese um, shipping and exploring sometimes, every once in a while. And there are legends of people who are obviously Chinese that the Native Americans had. Um, and so I'm not going to say it's impossible that something
right,
regular back and forth, I doubt. But an occasional accident where somebody lived, who knows?
right. This was that there was like pyramids and stuff there, but like you never know.
Yeah, pyramids are hard to
Um,
hide. I've been to the
right.
Grand Canyon.
And like hieroglyph, like there's like artwork and stuff on them.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how
yeah.
much I believe Billy Carlson anymore either, because recently he said, if you know what I'm referring to, he talks
I
about
don't.
aliens a lot. Okay.
Oh, it's Ancient Aliens? No, I don't. I don't watch. But what did he say?
He said Eastern Island. Well, he went live on TikTok and said that there was Eastern Island was like burnt down and all the statues were destroyed. And he didn't know when he was doing this that there was like a like local teenager there with a TikTok account that followed him right behind and went live and was like, he's lying. Just walked around. He's like, see, nothing. I live like really close to here. No.
Yeah, that's just, and that's so easy because again, if that had any semblance of truth, it would be big time headline news all over the
Right.
place. Yeah, because that's such oh, it's so famous. It's a place that's in
Hmm.
everybody's heart and imagination. So yeah, yeah, no, I that's just another reason not to believe him, in my
Oh,
opinion.
oh, I didn't get to chat button. We have some questions. One is for you.
Okay, I don't see any. Oh wait, I guess I can
Barry
go.
Sanders says, question for William. Are you aware of any of the stories or traditions based in Sicily at all?
Um, oh, and thank you, Barry. I just figured out how to turn them on. No, what was the question again? I didn't see that.
Are you aware of any stories or traditions based in Sicily at all?
No, not that I can think of. I know the Greeks, the Mycenaeans, I believe, were in Sicily, so that goes back to the Bronze Age. Um, um, and there were already people there. Sicily's an old site of civilization, human activity, but I don't.
I've I've heard some UFO stories from out of Sicily.
Oh, really?
Yes, I actually had a lady come on. We always had problems with something with Italy, and this program would just never. It would always crash on us.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, yeah, there's a lot of uh, extraterrestrial or ufology going on in
Cool. What
Italy.
kind of stuff?
One of the darkest stories is from the 80s, and it resembles a cattle mutilation, but on a person.
Oh,
And yeah, and it's to a point where it's like I think it's like 1982, but he's like dissected down to the cell in his face. Like part of his face is just like,
oh, wow.
yeah, that's just one of them. Like nobody.
And it wasn't a serial killer or
They cut down. They like dissected him like down to the cell. They had nothing that sharp that could have cut you back then.
down to the cell. Wow.
Like, oh yeah, resembled exactly how our cattle mutilations are here in the U.S.
Okay,
But I don't,
that's interesting.
there's a lot of other stuff going on over there in the 80s too. So you never know.
That's right. Yeah.
There could be some freak way that somebody did that to somebody else. But yeah, that was
Exactly.
the one that really creeped me out.
Hmm.
A lot of people seeing stuff, including police officers. It's like one of the first policeman stories comes out of Sicily,
Okay.
where it was, documented by an officer who was on the job at the scene that chased it, and it just went, I believe he saw
Uh-huh.
a big red light that he chased, and it just, whoop, he
Right.
was like, uh, you know, them sort of
That
things.
part of the world, I could also see um, some pretty secretive military equipment because of where it's located. Um,
Yeah,
but
I don't know too.
I
The
don't
other
know.
thing I would throw in with that is what see a lot with like contactees. It's very family. It keeps going for generations, and I mean they're a very, very family oriented. You know, I'm not surprised there's a lot of activity going on in Italy.
Okay. Yeah, no, I hadn't heard that before. That's interesting. I know.
I honestly think wherever you try to find UFOs, you're gonna see. Wherever people are up to look into the sky and be like, "Oh, that's something." I see something. You're gonna find
Yeah.
something.
And I'm very suspicious of anything that's just a little dot of light someplace 5 zillion miles up there. The
Right.
people seeing these things are not astrologers or astronomers, I mean, or physicists or anything else. But there's a lot that's seen that's more up close, much easier not to mistake for something else.
Hmm.
No, the thing I saw was huge and round and multicolored with or storied with lights that were flashing, and it went down behind a hill not far from where a friend of mine and I were. It was like midnight. We almost went because I thought we could probably find it. Um, Again, the Malala River corridor. Um, and then we thought by the time we got into my car, oh, we might find it. And we decided we really didn't want to find out if that was a good idea or not. And we went the other direction and went home. But
Was this when you were a teenager? Were you doing the,
yeah, I was in high school.
okay? Was this so you weren't really doing a lot of the mediumship yet, or being a medium yet, right?
Not yet. I hadn't thought of trying to communicate. And I don't really want to communicate with them. I don't want to set up that link. I
Mm,
don't know them. And I would assume, and I don't know if they're interdimensional, extraterrestrial. I don't know if they're um, empty ships, maybe with some robots. I don't know. I don't know anything except that
right.
if they're living beings, they're going to probably be somewhat like us in that there'll be a variety of cultures and a variety of temperaments within each culture and a lot of different motivations. And some of them might be great, and some of them might be pretty nasty, and some of them might think they're doing good things and do a lot of damage. Um, and I just don't feel the need to explore that in person. Um, Space has always fascinated me, but I have no desire to be in a spaceship.
No,
No. Um, yeah, I kind of like gravity.
I always wanted to be an astronaut, and I was always fascinated with Star Wars. I mean, I do this, but William Shatner, when he went into space, is one of the most disturbing things to me, or said I've read. When he went into space, he said that it was the most cold and alone he's ever felt in the universe. When he actually left the planet when he was with Jeff Bezos,
Uh-huh.
and I was
That
like,
makes sense.
"Wow, did you think the Star Captain was going to say something like that?" He's like, "Yeah, it was. I felt utterly, completely alone.
Wow.
He didn't like it. You know, the feeling of leaving the planet, its
Yeah,
orbit."
I could see that. And I've thought about being an astronaut too. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm saying an alien spacecraft. Um, I want to.
You're probably a lot safer than he is in space,
Yeah, but I'm not as assured of getting back,
right?
and especially when anybody I know is still alive. So there's an excitement and the idea of what's out there that's kind of interesting, but it's also just a little beyond my comfort point.
Right.
I can't help it.
Oh, I have another quick question. Jason said, "Is that the same as the black-eyed children?" I don't think so. Of course, Josh is welcome to answer. Did you hear me, Jason? I said I honestly think the Moonite children, from what I've heard and researched of it, is like their kind of experience with a being like almost like the Greys.
Being like with what?
Greys, like just native
Oh,
stories. Have
okay.
you? I was answering Jason H's question,
Okay.
and then there's
Did he
one
did
other
he say
down there.
moon-eyed or did he say black-eyed?
he said, "Are they the same as the black-eyed children?" And I said,
Okay,
"No."
I don't think so.
Have you had any experience with black-eyed children or anything
I
negative
haven't.
with?
I don't know. I don't know if they're real or not. I know there are a lot of stories about them, but you know how stories propagate and get spread around.
Yeah, I
Um,
honestly, I don't know. I've tried to find people. I've searched, and it was like, because like you hear all the stories. I'm like, I want to hear someone who's got experience with one of these, and it never pans out to anything.
right. Hmm. Yeah. So I'm kind of thinking there probably isn't anything to it, but I'm not going to say I've met every type of being out there either.
Right. Well, it's
Hmm.
probably best that I haven't met some black-eyed children though either. I don't know how exactly I'd handle that situation.
Right.
Do you?
Well, it,
I'd probably be one of them nose forward, like I said, how I deal with other stuff. I just, yep, you have a good day.
yep. Exactly. And that's, it seems like when people basically do that, don't let them in, they're fine. But I just, um, I've met a lot of different kinds of beings, and I've met a lot of non-human beings. I haven't ever met anything evil, pure evil. I haven't met anything pure good. So from the old Christ or the Sunday school angel perspective, I just don't have any proof of any of that kind of being, or the old school demon type thing the same way.
Mhm.
I don't believe that either one of those exist. Um, there are some things that aren't very nice, but that doesn't mean they're pure evil or pure good. There are a lot of really good things out there too, but um, um, yeah. So I'm sorry, I caught up on some of those too.
Comment?
Uh-huh. But just a little bit that was showing. But
Oh, I can just keep scrolling. Oops. I thought that
I like your logo up at the top.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Bigfoot down the
yeah.
rabbit hole. My wife designed it.
She did a good job.
So, what happened with your Bigfoot experience?
Well, um, a friend of mine who I trust um, put together a group of people, a small group, to go out to the woods in the Cascades, um, in an area that he knew to be an area of activity. And we were camping, and which is in itself an interesting experience for me these days. Um, I used to love it as a kid. I'm not quite so fond of it these days. I mean, it's fine, but I'd rather have a bed.
I, I, I know exactly where you are too with that. And I used to love camping too myself. I always did growing up. My wife has too, but it's so different when you have kids too.
Yep, yep. And, and I like a hard-sided vehicle around me, um, preferably an old castle in England or someplace, and curl up in a four-poster, But, um, but anyway, I digress. We were out here, and it was the group of us. We were just off of kind of a Forest Service gravel road, and it was dead end. And the guy that organized it, knew everybody had gone back down for the day because people come up to go huckleberry picking, and that it was just us anywhere around. There was nobody else around anywhere, and um, we were walking down the gravel road, and as we got to his place not too far away. There was a big clearing, and there was a bit of a breeze blowing. And we had light from from the stars. I'm not sure if the moon was out yet. I don't think it was, but it was bright enough from the stars, and our eyes were used to it that we didn't have flashlights on or anything like that, and we could see pretty well. But it's dark, so you don't see a lot of detail, especially in the distance. And I saw this huge thing walking back and forth behind the tree line. It was just a thin row of trees and bushes in front of him, and he was walking. It seems like he'd go one way and the wind would blow the trees the other, but it wasn't clear enough for me to make any kind of determination. I watched for a little bit, and I was kind of at the back of the group, and um, we went on down the road for a little bit, and then coming back, there wasn't any wind at all. He was in front of the trees walking back and forth, and it was very clear. I couldn't make out facial details or anything, but and it was very clear that he wanted me to see him, which was really an honor because they don't want any proof of
Hmm.
their existence. Um, I have been communicating with them telepathically, as a medium, and um, I take that for what it's worth. I could be delusional um, about the communications, but I know I wasn't about the sighting. We weren't even drinking, let alone doing anything else that could create any kind of an imagination or hallucination. Um, and we'd had a lot of other things going on that night with the Fae, and it was just interesting how it all put together. I'd been communicating with the family, a male, female, and like a pre or early adolescent female. And and then this guy, and again, I was at the back of the line, and I told people when I caught up, but um, it was really good. And my guide said, "Okay, they exist now. No, don't get trapped in this. Time to move on to other stuff." And it's like, yeah, I've been here, done this. Now I don't need to do it anymore. I know they're there. I know they want to be left alone, so I want to honor that. And we did go back the next year, and a friend of mine came with me. And as we were packing up to leave, he had a pebble hit him square in the chest. And it wasn't hard. Nobody was trying to hurt him. It was just getting his attention. And
That's cool.
there were no people except for our group. And our group nobody was standing in the direction the pebble came from. And there was a tree line there, and then a bit of not a cliff as much as a bluff. It was steep, but it was, walkable. Um, Bigfoot or a Fae, I'm not quite sure which one. Probably Bigfoot. Um, but we can't think of anything else. And Devin doesn't make things up. And we saw the pebble, and I was standing right next to him and heard him say something. So, um, and that was the last expedition I went on. It's like, okay, I know, so I don't need to go back. And
Do you think they communicate back and forth, the Fae and like the Bigfoots?
yeah, I think they can communicate telepathically, and I think otherwise too. This friend of mine, everybody goes in and bangs logs and does all this stuff. And I told this friend that set it up, it's like, no, don't do that. They don't like it. It makes them mad. but people do it
I
to
would
try to get it.
imagine like just going into somebody's house and banging on their stuff until they came out.
Yeah, and because and people do it in part because it elicits a response, but the Bigfoot, you hear people talk about him doing it, and I know people who have had experiences with that. Well, a lot of times that's a to be threatening or to let people know, "Hey, you're in our territory," or maybe communicate back and forth some too, but it's often not a welcome, you
Right?
know?
You should go. That's a you should go.
Yeah, and so if we come in there telling them to leave, that doesn't receive very well, and, that's one of the unintended consequences of doing things when you don't necessarily know what you're really doing, um, and we have a tendency to do that in this country or in society as a whole, and, it isn't always very helpful,
No.
but I was very grateful, and I was very glad to know that the communications I had probably were real because I hadn't seen one and I needed to see one that I couldn't explain away any other way. I've spent years trying to come up with an alternative to what I saw, and I can't. And so um, that tells me I've had proof that 99.99% sure they exist. I'll leave myself a little bit of room that I could have misinterpreted.
I don't know, it sounds pretty spot on. I've
Yeah,
what I've heard from other people who experienced it too, and there's usually a couple other people I believe that have really been searching like most of their lives about it and found it. Or usually, and then they say exactly the same thing that you say in the begin that you said to me in the beginning is, "I'm not going to take you there. I don't
yeah,
want people to know where they are. We've t we have exchanged information, and they're better left alone. We're actually the ones that are really behind."
yep. Hmm. And we're a dangerous species. We really are. And even if we have good intent, what follows us can be devastating. And so it's important to let beings be who they are and um, not out them, so to speak, as far as go here and you'll see all this stuff. Um, that said, I know I'll take Vivian some places probably that are supposed to have a little bit, or some of my other friends. If Jason is who I think it is, his brother anyway, has already said he would take her and different things, and I may just let them go and do their thing. I'll make dinner, but uh, yeah, it's an interesting world we live in, and
Absolutely.
the more we can see that which is beyond our five senses, I think the more interesting it is, and the more complete our existence is.
You talked about the Fae and the Bigfoot now. Is there any other beings you came across while being a medium?
Well, the Fae I've seen physically, different ones, um, and um, as well as medium wise. That night with the Bigfoot, there were these, I call them fairy lights. But you know how when you get on a dusty road and the car headlights pick up all the dust particles and it's like this beam of little dust particles, all these little
Hmm.
light type things, the reflection. Well, there was like a current or a river of those that started beyond where we started and then came up and kept going past us, and they'd move around us, and they weren't all the way down to the ground or up that high. It was just a narrow kind of a beam, and there wasn't anything to give external to light them up. These were self-illuminating. So this wasn't reflections from a car light or a flashlight or anything else. Um, these were self-illuminating, and other people saw some things too. We also saw some slightly larger ones on plants and bushes, and then a few others that were even bigger, as well as I saw faces peering out and a few things like that. And when we walked back up to camp, that stream started down below where we were, where we stopped, and then came back up. So it's one, we weren't creating any dust. Two, there wasn't any kind of a light source to illuminate it. It didn't start where we ended or started. It started further beyond that. So this wasn't anything our walking on a gravel road could have created. Um, and it was the first time I'd seen it to that extent. But the Fae had told me Bigfoot is like them, being interdimensional, and the Bigfoot told me, and I think they're all related that way. And again, take it for what it's worth as a medium. I don't expect anybody to believe what I say just because I said it. There's no way I can prove what I pick up along those lines as a medium. It's not like I can go find a picture someplace or somebody can
Right.
hand me a historic document. But somebody say, "Oh yeah, that's Grandpa to the T." But no, it doesn't work that way. Yeah.
So that's wild though. I wonder if they like work together. Like that's why they're so hard to see. And like when people go searching for them, like the Fae, I wonder if the Fae are openly helping with Bigfoot.
Well, I think they're connected. I don't know if they need help exactly, but I think they support each other in a sense. They're not. I haven't ever gotten the sense that they're competitive, as in competing for any kind of resources or anything else. That they are very harmonious. They each live their lives,
That's just our
and
species.
yeah, and um, and their realms overlap and are partially the same, but I'm not sure that they're exactly the same. Um, I don't know enough about how that works. I mean, do you have dimension four and a quarter, four and a third, four and a half, where you've got things that might look shadowy to each other, but they're not quite in the same place? And then they all kind of, when they're here, look solid to everybody? Or are they just in another place? Do they each have their own? I mean,
Right.
a lot of questions, and far more questions than answers.
That's how it usually goes.
Yeah. Mhm.
What was the main thing the Bigfoots told you though when you communicated with them?
No good follows a man. That's why the father didn't want the little girl or the girl to touch the hand of my friend when he invited. And this friend of mine was so safe. It's and so good about things. Um, I mean, and that's part of when he was saying, doesn't matter your intent. It's what comes after you.
Mm.
And he was right. And we were on a Forest Service road that had been blasted out. There was a gravel quarry right by where we were for the road. I mean, it wasn't anything commercial. Um, and it's you know, they know that if people can prove their existence, they'll get all these people out there even more trying to either put them in zoos or on display or mount their heads as a trophy. Um, there are rumors that Teddy Roosevelt, and I've been told this is true by people I trust, but I haven't seen the quote in the history book, so
Okay, well,
80% I'm 80% sure this is probably correct, but I'm not going to swear by it by any means. But that Teddy Roosevelt was basically hunting for them in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains and
I
found
yeah,
one.
I've heard this too, actually, the same story that
Yeah,
he was an avid cryptid hunter, actually. I mean, hunter in general, but like he was very much into paranormal and cryptozoology
that I
because it
hadn't
was a
heard,
new.
but I knew this part. And Teddy was I mean, part of the big macho thing for a Hyde Park socialite is you
But
shoot
I
everything that
also,
moves.
but it wasn't just that too. I mean, I'm pretty sure I could be wrong about this, but I've heard stories about that he was also like documenting a lot of the stuff too. Like when he would be hunting, he would see these birds and then he would write down about it and information that he was very, very much into the wilderness that way too.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right, and I don't know the details about that at all, but I think you're
But
right.
you
He
know,
wasn't just out. He was an outdoorsman in a lot of
mhm.
ways, and it wasn't just killing what he could find. It was also what you're saying. But he couldn't shoot the Bigfoot because it was too human,
Hmm.
is what I was told he said. Um,
What are your
and
thoughts on some of the scary Bigfoot stories? I know them were some of the ones that had Teddy Roosevelt infatuated with Bigfoot is that he heard stories that were like passed down from mountain men and loggers that there was these monsters in the woods.
well, there'd be pretty big monsters for sure, and you're invading on their space. You're destroying their space. I can see where they'd be upset about it. Um, I haven't seen anything that has any proof of them doing anything nasty. You hear the reports and you see things
Mhm.
on TV, but my rule of thumb is if it's on commercial television, it has one purpose, and that's to make money. And accuracy and truth is secondary. It doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean it's not great. Um, there's some great shows out there. There's some that maybe aren't. I'm not. I'm just saying. I'm aware. I'm cynical enough to know that profits for a few people are what this show is really about, and they get that through entertainment, and that entertainment has a varying degree of correlation or connectivity to truth,
Right.
depending on the show. And so, and I have no way of proving right or wrong. So, um, I'm careful about that. And if BBC puts it out as a documentary or public broadcasting does, um, I'm pretty confident in it. National Geographic did before Rupert Murdoch bought them. I'm pretty confident in it. Um, but a lot of the rest of it, I'm I'm not as I need more proof, is what I'm saying.
Right. Um, have you heard any stories about the Mothman and any other fantastic creatures?
I hear stories, but again, I don't know that anything's true or not. I mean, there are cryptos out there. I mean, I've seen a Bigfoot. I know there's something. Um, you see the TV shows, but you don't ever really find the headlines in some kind of a if these stories were really true, why wouldn't they get bigger press all over? Because I mean, it's pretty sensational, and I don't know, it's a question I have. I don't have a direct experience, and I'm very skeptical about anything, including myself, that I can't prove with physically somehow, or
You're in Oregon. You're in Oregon too, right?
yeah, Oregon.
Um, yeah, you guys. I don't think there is any Mothman stories of that. It's not by you.
The only stories we have of anything are Bigfoot.
Yeah,
Now I've traveled all over the country. I've been to all the states, many of them several times. We traveled when I was a kid, but none of those stories were around in those days. Bigfoot was, but that was it. Um, and we were going to. My dad was a history teacher, and I'm a history nut, so we weren't. We were doing a lot of scenery and national parks and everything else, but we were doing a lot of major historic sites, and we weren't
that's so cool.
we weren't out in the middle of the wilderness looking for things. Um, so I don't know. I'm not going to say they don't exist. I just have no. I've never
I think
talked to
it's
anybody
usually.
with that experience.
I think it's always usually something to do with tragedy with Mothman. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and there are things like mass hysteria, or people make something up to explain something else, or
I don't know. When it comes to Mothman, though, with being a researcher, there were so many sightings, and then there was like UFO sightings right after that, and I honestly feel like that was because they were intrigued of what that was. Too. I don't.
okay.
And there's a big military storage facility right where that all happened too. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, there's one of the cases that I've heard about. I knew there was some kind of a. I watched some show on something about something. Um, yeah, but you know more about this than I do. And
Yeah. I know there was like a big dynamite facility there, and then people wonder too if it was some sort of mutated species. And I don't know.
that could be.
There's
I mean, look,
so many witnesses.
yeah. Well, look at all the things we've done
Mhm.
that can create radiation, or anything else that um, that can cause mutations, or chemicals, or I mean, there are just all kinds of things that can create one-offs. And species sometimes interbreed. You get
Mhm.
a genetic defect in something that creates um, something that looks very strange and unusual. Um, I don't know. I just don't know. Like I
Yeah,
say,
no
you've looked
worries.
more at it more than I have, and maybe the UFOs. Maybe it's a sign that these are all interdimensional, including the
It could
UFOs,
be.
and they're just all
I
kind of
mean,
coming through together in hotspots.
it's so weird though too, because with like I said, Mothman, there's always something with tragedy happening right beforehand. But then recently there was reports of mailmen seeing it, like a lot of different mailmen, right by the same place, right by the O'Hare Airport in Chicago.
Oh, really?
And these been the last few years, and it's not been like one or two. It's like an inside joke with them because they're like, yeah, we don't want that route, so you'll see the flying monster.
Yeah. Oh,
And I
that's
mean.
interesting.
We don't have anything. I mean, we have hawks around here in Wisconsin and Illinois, but nothing big.
Well, if you're like,
Is
I
it
remember you've got mosquitoes that could carry you away. Um,
right?
and some pretty big biting flies.
Oh, somebody asked about the chupacabra. I honestly think it's the thylacine, and it's just been misidentified.
You think it's a what?
Uh, Thylacine, I think is the proper way to say it. I could be pronouncing that wrong too. Tasmanian tigers. A lot of people are expecting that there is like some that are around still, and that's what the chupacabra is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't see the question. Okay.
But if you look, oh no, it didn't go up. My bad. And then Jason said, "A year in Chicago, we've had a flying hominid. We need Mothman credibility. Mothman credibility."
Huh.
Hmm. So he is
Yeah.
also heard that. Must be from Chicago.
I've
Um,
got a friend that lives in the Chicago area. I'll have to ask him if he's seen it.
right? Apparently, right by like the O'Hare Airport.
I've flown in and out of that airport many times. Um, but um, didn't see anything from the plane
Right?
or
It
on the way into the city. But that's interesting. And to have them close to something that big,
Mhm.
um, then that makes me wonder why they would want to be. Because the place you were talking about earlier, that's a very small rural town at the other end of the country. Or, I mean, basically, it was pretty far south, if I remember right.
Yeah, yeah. Point Pleasant, I believe it was.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and it
now it's a
seems
big
like,
tourist destination though because of it, which is funny.
yeah. Well, that's another thing. A lot of places will create a story to bring people in.
We have the Hodag.
What's that?
It's like this giant monster, and it was like such the biggest bullshit story ever. This guy was like back in the day said he found some lumberjack said a legend about like this crocodile monster that lived in the woods in like around here, Canada, and in the 1800s, somebody said they caught one, and then they
Okay.
had like a little freak show, but with like really low lighting. And then everybody, everybody in town was paying him to do it. And then one day, like 20 years later, he's like, I was gonna have a live meet and greet with it, but he burnt his barn down. And now there's a big country music western festival there called the Hodag
Okay.
every year. And their local football team is that monster's their symbol, and they call themselves the Hodag. So it's just a little, how things happen like that.
Uh-huh. Well,
Folklore.
you hear of every once in a while a hotel or something creating ghost stories to bring
Oh
in.
yeah.
And I'm I was a trustee for an organization with one of the older, a pretty important historic house where I live. And at one point back in the 60s or so, maybe 70s, but I think 60s, um, ticket sales were the only source of revenue. And these places are pretty hard to maintain. So one of the docents made up some of the ghost stories that go with the house. Now, there are a lot of legitimate ghost stories, but some of them she made up to increase ticket sales. And you hear of towns doing things like that.
Hmm.
So that's always a question too. Did Mothman down there get a start by a few people? And
Right.
then other people think they see it because it's been planted in their head, it's out there?
Right. Mass hysteria.
Yeah,
Brought that up earlier.
and I don't know the answer to those. Those are all questions, um, and I need the, uh I
Jason
need the
H.
answers before I can make
There
a
was a UFO sighting had O'Hare temporarily grounded an aircraft till it shot up and punched a hole in a cloud. That's wild.
Yeah. Well, at
Very
least the
strange.
government's talking a little bit about um, the UFOs or unnamed aerial phenomena or whatever they're calling them now.
UAPs.
Yeah, and admitting that there have been some cases that they can't explain. And
I think there's been a lot. I think there's, I don't know. That's a whole big rabbit hole in another show. I think there's a lot lied to us about that. I think it's because of the profit margins and keeping people rich and covering
yeah,
up stuff. I think a lot of knowledge is kept from us because they kept shit hidden from us and they, lied and lied and lied and keep doing it over and
and some of it's, important. I know
over. I
that
mean,
several of the UFO sightings have been experimental aircraft for the military,
right.
like the
But it's
B-1 bomber.
something I know, but it's something when Air Force pilots are coming up and being like, "We have this video footage. People need to
Oh,
see it."
oh,
Like the Tic Tac,
absolutely. Yeah, no, no, absolutely, I agree. There's a lot out there that they're admitting. I'm just saying that there are so many things that sometimes we think, well, it's unidentified to us. So calling it a UFO is absolutely accurate to us. It's just that they know, and frankly, if they're developing something like that, it's probably good that other countries don't know about it at that point.
hmm
So, that kind of a lie I don't mind. Um, it's other kinds that I have a problem with. But one of
right,
the theories about even Area 51 is that at the same time the spacecraft was supposed to have gone down and all that, um, the military was working on an advanced radar system that was ultra top secret, and they were using a type of balloon type thing or whatever made out of the material that was found there. The material matched what they were using for this new radar system. And the government decided let people think there were UFOs instead of saying no, this is a new top secret defensive weapon. That would make sense. I'm not going to say it's true. It's one of the theories that have been put out there.
right.
Yeah. Um,
But that's exactly how our country would be, though, too. If like just this advanced piece of equipment just landed in our laps. Nope, nothing happened. Nothing's there. you
oh,
know?
every country in the world would be that way.
Right.
You know,
Aliens? What are aliens? We don't know any aliens.
people have been stealing from each other technology ever since technology was built. I
Since
was,
fire.
yeah, I was in the oldest silk bazaar in Anatolia, in Turkey, and it's where somebody had gone on a trading mission to China for silk and met and saw the process of making silk and smuggled out a few of the silkworm cocoons. And so they could start making the silk in Turkey instead of having to import it all from China. And, so this is 800 years ago. Um, and that was going on before that, sharing technology deliberately or learning from what you see from others. And, oh, yeah, you just open the newspapers and you'll see all the latest who's been
Right.
hacking into what system to gain what technology. It's kind of scary, actually. I don't like it.
Yeah. And then everything happening with AI now.
It
What's your
makes
thought
it
on
so
that?
much harder to know what's real and what isn't real.
We also have that. I talked about it briefly on Dark Dark Mirror Radio once. I think I talked about it on one of my episodes with somebody. I don't remember. Um, there's a new technology out with stem cells called, I believe they're calling them organoids, but they're basically like a robot with stem cells inside of it. So that's like
I've
a
heard
whole
of
new
that.
form of conscious that's like being created right now.
Yeah.
Think about
No,
it.
I've heard of that. Um, I heard of that on NPR. It's been a while, but that's scary. I mean, it's potentially very useful, but it can. We always seem to use things the wrong way.
And then there's another one that I heard about where we're taking like dead bugs and dead animals and like reanimating them for different purposes and using their skeletal structures for like robotics.
I didn't know about that. I knew they
Yeah.
were doing some building of things that look kind of like bugs. I didn't
This
realize they were
one is
doing that.
this one was they just like completely reprogrammed like a spider. Like they filled it with like some sort of liquid and like but it was a live spider at one point and they use it for something now. I-
Huh. Yeah. Yeah, this is too much like Frankenstein.
Right. It gets scary.
It does. It really does. And if only a quarter of everything we hear about is true, that's more than enough to be scared. And the reality is there's probably a whole lot going on we don't know about. And the thing is, this technology and these advancements aren't bad in themselves. It's how they're used. And they could
And
be used in a
and they're used.
positive way or negative. And they always wind up being used for both. And even the positive can have unintended consequences. Um, so I find that it's harder and harder to get a full understanding of cause and effect and consequence with a lot of things, just because there are so many things that our technology now can do to
Mhm.
create something that we're not even thinking is possible, just totally off the radar screen.
Right. I keep saying this too. We live in an age where we can't believe in our eyes anymore.
Exactly, especially with the advances in AI. But even before
Mhm.
that, um, you could make pictures and videos that were only experts could tell apart. But now you can do it on your cell phone.
Right.
Yeah, used to be you'd have to have a good lab to do it. Um, and it makes it much more difficult to know what to trust and
Really.
what not to trust.
Right.
hmm I keep telling everybody I want to go back and to the days where I have scribes and a horse and carriage, and I'll pay everybody really well and treat them well. And um, telephone's okay. I like electric lights. That's okay. Um, well, yeah, we can't have the fossil fuels back then either. But anyway, go to a lower tech um,
Right.
system, but that's not going to happen unless the power goes out for long term, which it
Right.
probably will.
It could. It might. Let's hope
Yeah,
not.
yeah. I mean, when I was at Oregon State, our engineering department, we had one of the best in the country, and they were almost decertified because our math department wasn't very good. And the problem with the math department is people were relying too much on the programmable calculators. HP had, you could even make strips to put in, and um, nowhere near like our computers and stuff. But this was back when you you wrote computer code on a punch card and ran it through a mainframe that was, the size of a major building just to do small stuff.
Right.
And oh, how did that start? Where was I going with that? There was a purpose for that.
They're really
I can't remember. How did I
bad. Right.
start
That's
that?
okay. I don't know. I got off too. It's okay.
Yeah, there was a purpose for that. Sorry,
Oh,
folks.
we originally were talking about AI.
Right. And um, that piece, I don't know, it triggered a rabbit hole and it just went, good old
Right.
ADHD. What can I say? Talking to me can be an experience. I won't say what kind. If any of the listeners remember where I was going on that, um, put it up there and Josh can tell me.
Listen, I have absolute faith that we, as a collective, will transcend AI towards something that feels comfortable, but the potential ties between seeing and creating is interesting to witness. It's very true. But I will say, if you're on TikTok and you're seeing any of the Russia-Ukraine videos with the drones, that's just terrifying. Like, it's definitely a different world we live in now.
Foreign governments are creating havoc through fake um, videos and posts in countries all over the world
Right.
and
But the ones I'm
influencing those.
referring about are the actual like combat footage just between the drones, just how scary it is. It's not like how it was in Vietnam or even Iraq. It's different. It's a different world we live in now, and that
Oh,
has been
absolutely.
abundantly shown that maybe we should close down with technology.
Yeah. Um, oh, I remember. Thank you. That put me back where we were. I was saying that the math department, because people was almost deserted or was bad because all of these students weren't learning how to do the problems on paper and pencil. They could they used their calculators all the time. And so the problem was, what happens when your battery's dead and you're in the field? What happens when you don't have a power source? You don't have the knowledge to do the work. And it's the same kind of thing. I mean, solar flares aren't a myth. They're right on Nova and OPB and all the rest of it. And, there are all kinds of things that can affect. We've had we've had grids closed down on major scales just from weather or different things, and you get a big enough of cascade, and how do you turn it back on again if nobody knows how to do the math? The same kind of thing.
Most major countries have the capability to do it to another country too, actually.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's the scary part.
I'm not saying
We're
that
in a
we're free.
very riled up state too right now that we're living in.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I don't like any of it. But I
So,
guess if one's going to have it, the other you've got to have it too, at least to protect. But um, well, shoot, we used to do it through radio and through leaflet dropping and such in Europe. And but of course, what we were spreading was good stuff. You know,
right.
we were always pure and innocent. I said I wasn't going to do politics. Okay, I won't. I won't go
That's
there.
right.
I'm
Do we
talking
have
Palestinian
any?
babies.
It's,
Pardon me?
I was gonna say we almost been talking an hour and a half. We'll probably take a couple more questions and head out. Is there
Okay.
any questions for William? And pink wave. No first meeting, William. Jason said. So it's a different Jason than you know.
Yeah.
Question.
Same last initial though, so I thought. And he watches my show, so I thought he might. Trickster beings. Um, I don't know. I used to be pretty fond of a practical joke now and again. Um, oh, what's William's channel? Let me. Oh, I don't know if I can. I
I
don't know
have
how to
links and
do it.
stuff too. On,
Okay. Yeah, that would be great because I do have a YouTube channel that's
I
separate.
have it on the. I have it on the when I
Oh,
post
good.
it around. Yeah,
Oh, good.
I'll
Yeah, thank
post a
you.
link too. Put a link in the comments to your
Okay, good.
channel.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I think there are a lot of beings out there that like to play tricks and do things. And I think for the most part it's harmless, just like anybody else doing it. And if it gets to be too much, you can tell them, hey, stop. This is over the top. Or, like I need those car keys back. We're gonna get kicked out if I can't pay the mortgage or the rent. So bring me back my checkbook and my car keys. You know,
Right. Right.
things like that. Because you can set ground rules and you can talk to them. You have to be consistent. Um, and it's very rare that anything in the house is trying to be really mean and cruel and vindictive for the sake of being so. A lot of times it's a misunderstanding or it's practical jokes and stuff that go too far. Just like breathing people, you know?
Right.
Y- Yeah.
Barry headed out because he's in the UK.
Uh, oh, I love the UK. I miss it every day. First time I felt at home in my life, I was 27 and landed at Heathrow.
How long did you stay?
3 months that time.
Oh wow.
I lived there basically. Oh, you do all the things. I did all the things that you're supposed to do at 27. Fell in love, did all that kind of thing. Couldn't find a way to work,
Cool.
but it was great. Clubbing in London and Paris and Amsterdam was also a lot of fun.
I can only imagine.
1984. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, do you want to mention your YouTube?
Yeah.
I mean your show.
I have a show called Metaphysical Insights. Um, my Facebook professional page is Para Insights, and Paranormal Insights is my Instagram and I think Twitter. I have a personal William Becker page, but that does get political. Um, so um, I don't suggest that for everybody. Um, and paranormalinsights.net is my website, but I'm locked out of my website. I can't remember how to get in because things have
Oh
changed through
no.
carriers, and so it's a couple years out of date. But I think the links to a couple of the books I've written still work on that site. And the I think the link to uh, Para Insights Facebook still links there. Oh, and Jason just put my YouTube up, William Becker 136 on YouTube.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
Jason. I appreciate that. Um,
you.
and so those are pretty good ways. Most of my videos through Simply Spooky, all the biggest number of views have been on the Simply Spooky Network Facebook page, but I'm trying to get more views on my YouTube. And YouTube has shows that go back years I've done on different platforms, and including cable access and stuff.
Oh, awesome. I have to check some of them out.
Yeah, some of them, and there's a variety. I have a variety of different people on. With this show, I have historians. Sometimes I have storytellers. I have um, metaphysics, paranormal, different things. Usually don't have much that's a conspiracy or anything. Um, but they're, things I'm interested in.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty eclectic, so lots of different things I'm interested in.
It all comes together though, huh?
I hope so. It does for me. I don't know if it works
Right.
for others, but it works for me.
That's how I kind of ended up into this. Everything kind of bleeds together at some
Yeah,
point.
I love it. Your studio space is great.
Thank you. Thanks for being on, Jason. We appreciate you in the comments.
Yes, and I thank all of you. There's a lot I didn't see, but um, I'll see if I can go through after the fact too. And make sure I have the link how to share this out on my Facebook page and Instagram and stuff, if you
Oh, no
wouldn't mind.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to you all.
I think I heard a young ghost.
Yep. Always being loud. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you so much, Josh.